We're making progress. I'm going to flip it over and get the sump off and have a look inside. Probably the worst thing that could happen. Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Thank you so much for joining us again. We're back in the workshop and we are getting straight to business today. We're not messing around because I have not got much time and I've got a lot to do. It has been such a manic couple of weeks. This workshop here is turning into more of a building site than ever. There's been a truckload of concrete blocks that have been dropped off. Spike is here to start bricking up and blocking up the walls. But let's get on with today's task. We are back working on the Liberty V12. It's out of the chassis on its little stand. I'm going to strip the barrels and the exhaust and everything back off of it, flip it over and get the sump off and have a look inside. So in this episode, I can actually have a proper look inside the case to see what the rods look like, the crank looks like, and there's a lot of conversations to be had about the oil pump. Also, I know there's a Defender behind me. You'll find out about that later. Give me a chance. Let's get on with the engine first. We'll chat about this disaster later. I know what you're thinking already. How am I going to turn this engine over safely when it weighs a lot and I'm on my own? Well, luckily, I have a good friend that has lent me the perfect tool. Look at this beautiful old cast iron engine rotisserie. It's an absolute monster. Honestly, it is perfect. It's actually built for aeroplane engines. It's really long, hopefully long enough that I can put the case in here, bolt it onto these 4 little tabs that stick out, bolt everything down. It's got this geared mechanism on one side. I'm missing the original handle, but hey, I can use a spanner. Crank that round, and then the whole bed that the engine's bolted onto will rotate through 360 degrees. Nice and safe. It's a big, solid, heavy thing. It's all bolted together. And if I'm clever, I'll get the center of gravity somewhere near where the middle of the engine is, so it's not too much of an effort to turn back the right way. But bear in mind, there's no top end on the engine. I think that's a bit less of a worry. It has taken me the best part of the morning to get it out of the van and rebuild it. I had to take it apart to get it in the van. So now all I need to do is roll my stand with the engine on it that I built a few weeks ago. I use my big engine crane behind me, lift it off that stand, drop it on this one, line up some bolt holes, bolt it down, and we are away. Dear me, it has taken me most of the day to try and get this engine on this stand. Unfortunately, the stand is not quite long enough for the engine to sit entirely inside it between uprights. I could extend it with some other bits of angle iron if I had any. I've fought with it and got it somewhere sort of in the right place. It's good enough. I think it's good enough for what I need to do. As soon as I can get the sump off, the crank out, everything will become a lot more manageable. There'll be smaller chunks. I'll actually be able to lift pieces a bit easier. So I just need to be able to turn it upside down, even not entirely upside down, but just a bit. So the crank is now above the center line of the rotisserie, which is not ideal. As I turn it around, it's gonna hit the stand, but I'll be able to get most of the way around until it hits, and I'll just have to deal with the sump being slightly off. Everything is so difficult, but it's on, and I'm so grateful still to have this stand. Let's hope that the engine doesn't fall off the stand. Probably the worst thing that could happen. With the engine upside down, I can finally see underneath for the first time ever. This whole turquoise section is the sump, and this needs to be unbolted, but there are these two plates on the bottom. I'm assuming one is a filter and the other one is where the oil pump used to be. Whether that's a pressure relief valve, I don't know at the moment. But what I do know is they need to come off, and I want to see inside. Judging by these two, maybe this is some kind of pressure release valve. No, it is literally just a plate on the bottom. Now you can see the sump. To get the engine to sit lower in the car, this whole block is a problem. If the whole sump was this low, I can gain another, what's that, 100 mil maybe, lower the engine to get it right down as low as I can. So whatever that plate is that's on there, and whatever is stopping me from chopping this off, I need to lower that level with that. Whilst I was tearing down the engine, Spike and his mate Fergus were busy rebuilding the wall, which is very exciting. Every time I looked up, they were further along. They were making me feel like I'm working too slow. I cannot wait to see inside this engine, because every cover plate that I take off is giving me another little glimpse inside, and there seems to be a lot more going on in there than I first appreciated. The Liberty engine fits in a very narrow aeroplane, like nice and skinny, but it makes it taller. The tall, narrow engine is not great for the center of gravity of the car. So I need to get the engine as low as possible. In the last episode, I had it back in the chassis and eyed it up. I got it lower, as low as I could. But I've spoken to a couple of people that race these and really know their stuff, and they've said I'm nowhere near. I need to get it lower again. And I can't do that unless I modify the sump. So I'm going to have to potentially relocate the oil pump, but it's not quite that simple. As soon as this sump is off, we'll be able to see exactly what is happening inside and how these bearings are all oiled and where all these pipes are going. So I've got a ring of nuts to get off around the edge of the sump, and then hopefully it's going to lift away. Fingers crossed. After working my way around the entire circumference of the sump, all of those little bolts are off. This took a long time. All of the heads for these bolts were really badly corroded and no longer hexagonal, so every single one was a fight, especially the ones in between the webs. Access was terrible. I couldn't cut them off. I ended up hammering on a wrong sized socket. It took a long time, I'm talking hours, to get all of those off. Now all of these smaller bolts around the circumference are removed. I'll flip the engine back the right way up. Then I've got these big nuts to take off all the way down the center. These have got studs going from the sump all the way through the case and up to the top. These are the main bolts, the studs essentially, that hold both halves of the engine together. Really critical. These are going to be super tight. They're held in place with a split pin, which is the first thing that I've got to knock out the way. Bend the ears back over, get the split pin out. Then I can work on trying to undo the nuts. I'm using a lot of penetrating fluid. I've been spraying these for the last few weeks because I was dreading getting these off. I mean, look at them. They look so rusty and crusty already. I was worried. The chances of these actually coming out okay, very nerve-wracking, especially as there's so many of them. I've got the first two out, which is brilliant. I didn't have to use any heat or anything like that. So we can cut to a time lapse of me fighting with the rest. Nearly an hour of my life trying to undo all of these nuts. I cannot tell you how time consuming and slow process taking apart this engine is. Because it's so corroded, they're fighting you every step of the way. And I don't dare break anything or snap anything or cause any damage to the parts that I really want to keep. A lot of these nuts and bolts I will probably end up changing, but I still want to be able to get them off without causing any major damage to anything else. I've got the nuts for the main studs down the center all removed. a little persuasion with a copper mallet and to just give it a little shock just to see if I can get that parting line between the sump and the top of the case to just creep open. If that shows signs of popping open, we are onto a winner. As you can see, the case halves are starting to open. I need to make sure this happens evenly over the whole thing and all of these studs come out nice and evenly. So very carefully persuading each stud out all the way around. I'll keep working my way around so it comes off nice and evenly, and then we can remove the sump and have a look at the inside of this engine. Now I think it's time to call on a bit of help from Spike and Fergus because I need a hand getting this sump off.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect. Yep.
Where do you want it?
Just there, wherever you can. Yep. Thank you. That would have been a struggle on my own.
Yeah.
We're in. That's the case halves split. What a monumental moment this is. So glad that Spike and Fergus were here to give us a hand. The crank, I will admit, doesn't look fantastic. The bearing surfaces should be a nice polished surface. There are signs of rust. That's not the end of the world, bearing in mind we're making a new crank. A lot of you have commented actually saying this crank's not going to work as a V8. I know that. Originally the V8 Liberty engine was a flat plane crank, so this crank would not work. The plan would always be to make a new crank as the original V8 was intended. I've got a lot of degreasing and cleaning to do, probably get the pressure washer out, but now I can see the bottom of the sump. I need to cut the bottom of the sump and lower it, which will probably mean relocating the oil pump, which is a shame, but the most important thing is handling and having the engine as low as possible. There's these two tubes running the entire length of the inside of the case. I don't know what anything is doing at the moment. They're obviously oil passages and they are obviously gonna have to go. There's a lot to think about and I need to give it all a really good degrease and try and figure out where all these pipes go. You can see the case halves come apart very much like a B2 engine, what I'm familiar with. And then the bearings for the crank are actually these shells, which are separate components. And this one towards the front, towards the propeller end, is absolutely massive. And then in front of that is a huge thrust bearing. That sort of deals with the forces pushing in and out on the crank, which were massive when this had a huge propeller on the front of it, dealing with an aeroplane diving around. Once there's a flywheel, all the only back and forwards force is going to be the clutch. I would still quite like to keep that thrust bearing and that huge front bearing. Whether it's necessary or not is a debate. Some people seem to not think it's necessary. They're probably right, to be fair. I've got no evidence either way. Hopefully you can understand my thinking of keeping the left-hand side with all the cam drives and all of the gears at the end and the oil pump drive, and keeping the front and the right-hand side where it's got this big thrust bearing and this massive sort of main journal bearing, and just chop out a chunk out the middle and weld them back together. The rods, the bearings, the gear for the water pump drive and the drive up to the dynamo all look really good, definitely usable. I'm chuffed. Really, really good. But I'm gonna have to end the video here. I've run out of time. I've got so much to do before I head back to the repair shop for filming again. I hope that you've enjoyed the workshop update with Spike and Fergus getting on okay on the wall, and most importantly the engine. We're getting there, we're making progress. I've got some work to do on the Defender next, but you'll see more of that next week. Show your support to the channel, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, it all really helps. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week, Sunday 5 PM. Thank you.